Okay, here we go. This is what you're here for. I can see this, definitely. Because this is what I would be here for. What will be on the final exam? The final exam is 25 points, or 25% of your grade, which is a significant chunk. So y'all are going to show up for it. And if we can keep it down in the back, that would be great. Because I can't talk over you. Alright, so this particular summary is on the bhacker.com website. I don't have internet access right now, so I can't bring it up. But you can look for this. You don't have to worry about writing it all down. You can look for it out on the bhacker.com website. And I will also post this particular recording on that website in the same location, just in case you missed something that I said. You want to rewind it to hear exactly what I said. Alright, so what am I going to say? As I mentioned before, lectures 1 through 11, which is basically all of the PowerPoint lectures for the course, are on the exam. Each one of the PowerPoints I actually was able to record, so I have a YouTube video for each one of them if you have a problem with one of the topics. The content of the exam actually covers the programming assignments that we have done as well. It is not coming from any other source of material. So it's just the 11 PowerPoints and the assignments that we've had for the course, and anything that I would have said in class that's on a record. So there's no book. I did not use a book, is what I'm saying in terms of the content. And I did one thing even better for you. There are no questions about programming syntax, and the format of the exam is multiple choice. 25 multiple choice questions, actually. And there are absolutely no questions about Java syntax. Because as I mentioned before, this isn't Java programming, it's object-oriented design in Java. So, which is kind of interesting that I was able to come up with 25 questions. That was actually kind of easy. There are 5 different sets of this particular exam. Only 5 questions have been repeated on all 5 sets. Meaning some people will get questions that some other person did not get. However, all the questions will be of the same level of difficulty, and they'll be on the same topics and the same content. So it's impossible to cheat on this exam, is what I'm saying. Because you're going to get a question that your friend did not get. Only 5 of the 25 are repeated and they're mixed up. So, unless you happen to actually get the same exam and be sitting next to the same person, that is really the only way that you could possibly cheat on this thing. So no programming questions. No questions about programming syntax at all. There's a good percentage of the exam as I pulled the first one out, actually, the first one of the set, and I could tell you in general, all of them are heavy on the object concept and object orientation. Lecture number 11 is a must-read. You want to know about the concept of what a class is and what an object is, which is covered in week number 1, also in lecture 11. Know that you can create an instance of an object, and a class is a blueprint of an object, is the programming implementation, and a class can be created in C++, in Java, any object-oriented programming language. When the object is created, an instance or instantiation, and the exam is actually heavy on vocabulary. So you want to know what an instance of an object is. So an instantiation of the object is created. That's when it actually exists. It comes into life. We can make many different instances of these objects, and these objects can carry their own information. And what is the information that these objects have? Well, I'm skipping down to this one right here. They have identity, state, and behavior. So you're not going to pass the exam if you aren't familiar with the concept of objects or what kind of information is inside of them. So the identity would be the purpose or the responsibility of the object in the system. It's an employee object. It's a staff. It's an instructor who's also an employee, who's also a staff. If you remember that inheritance, this is where I say some of the concepts that were introduced in the programming assignments are heavily tested. The state, whether the person has a salary, if it's an employee, whether they have a salary, what is the salary, would be their state. Their behaviors, what can they do? Well, they can give themselves a raise. I don't know. Maybe they can't give themselves a raise. They can give somebody else a raise. They can ask for a name. They can change their name. They can change their salary. They can get promoted or something. So the concept, and this is all covered in lecture 11, actually. The concept of the identity state behavior, how objects are created in terms of the instantiation is an important concept. How objects exchange messages back and forth with each other through the methods. I don't use the word fields or data members or data methods. Member functions, I don't use any of that. I'm not going to trip you up on that vocabulary. None of it is actually being used. It's all concept-based, believe it or not. And believe it or not, you can come up with a lot of questions related to concepts. Referencing to objects. How do you call a method from an object? Using the dot notation, which is probably an easy type question. Parameter passing concepts. Parameter passing concepts would be calling methods, passing parameters in with methods that you're calling it. Get salary. You're not getting it. You're getting something. The accessor, the modifier kind of concept, where you're accessing information, getting salary, or you're modifying it. You're setting salary, and you're passing salary as a number, to that particular object's method to invoke a behavior on the object to set its salary. The concept of, and I want to say it is lecture 2 or 3 that gets into pass by value versus pass by reference. That's one of the non-standard questions that's on one of the versions of the exam. It's going to ask you about the referencing type, whether it's pass by value or pass by reference, and how it's used. There's an entire lecture on that. And I'm telling everybody, even though only one group of you is actually going to get that question, but you don't know who is going to get it. So it's not a bad idea to be familiar with the concept, just in case you're the one who gets it. This whole thing about static is on the exam. So what are static variables and methods? In fact, that's one of the standard 5 questions that appears on every one of the exams. The concept of when you use it, why you use it, how you use it, the exceptions or things that happen in terms of the, I had to see if there's anything written on the back of this paper, in terms of how it's used inside of a class, when you have static methods inside of a class and stuff of that nature. So that kind of brings you in the concept of class variables, class methods, and instance or objects, instance variables, instance methods, how they're used, why do you want to use a class variable, essentially. Think about the car example that I gave you. Keeping track of the number of cars in the garage would be a static thing. The number of employee IDs that are out, which is the next sequential number in this, that would be a static, or a class member, data member that you'd use for that. So the questions aren't going to give you static. It's actually not going to tell you that. It's not going to show you the source code. There's no source code at all on this exam, actually. But it's going to get at that concept. Is what we're looking at. The concept of garbage collection is also on the exam. However, no programming related, because there's no programming. In fact, we had one slide. I gave it to you today, actually. In fact, we saw it on the midterm too. We don't know. We don't have a delete. None of you sitting here are going to know that. Are going to make that mistake anyway. It's usually the people who aren't really taking this course, who have no idea what Java is all about, who are C++ people taking object-oriented design in Java. We're going to go, oh yeah, sure, you can deallocate. Oh yeah, sure, why not? So the concept of garbage collection and how that's managed by the runtime environment. There are no other questions. We didn't get into it in this particular class. If you take Java programming, and this is Java programming, and like maybe for the web development or for client server or for some other, there's a bunch of properties of the JVM that you can set. There's security policies, all sorts of different settings. You can't actually set garbage collection at all. It's just an automatic feature. But nothing about the JVM is on the exam. So I forgot to put that in this review, but no JVM questions, no compilation questions, nothing about even programming is on the exam. The object concept, however, the separate files, the classes, the concept of the driver program, not in this review, which is I'm thinking of right now actually. The concept of there being one main driver program, and then you have multiple classes that you're creating, and these classes are going to interact with each other, and they're going to be instantiated, and they're all going to live in the driver, and how the environment is shaped in terms of its composure there with the class. That concept's on there. Which gets into the concept, and I forgot to put that on here too. So this is good because I'm remembering stuff I forgot to put on here. Also important to note is the API, the abstraction quality of object orientation. What does abstraction mean? What does polymorphism mean? What does inheritance mean? What does encapsulation mean? And that's also out of lecture number 11. Why would you want to use polymorphism? Why would you want to use, why do we have, can we create encapsulation, or is that something that happens by default? And then also this concept of reuse. And now that I'm actually looking at one of the exams, so is the concept of overloading and overwriting in terms of programming technique. When we create and we overload a constructor to add a second piece of information or a third piece of information in a class that we're deriving from another class through inheritance, when we take and we overwrite a method completely to change the behavior of it through inheritance, when we build classes from classes, how you actually do that's not in here. The concept, however, is something to remember. Oh, here it is, actually. I am talking. Here we go. Overloading and overriding methods. I didn't mention it on here, but the constructor concept is also on the exam. Obviously, what the purpose of the constructor, how are constructors triggered in inheritance. There's no question here that has any mathematical calculation where you have to print the final order of something printing. In fact, I made it really easy. I left out. There's no questions that even involve source code. It's all words. It's all English words, actually. So I actually thought it was pretty easy when I got done with it and I looked at it. Sometimes when I write an exam, I go, oh, that's hard. Ooh, they're not going to like this one. This one I went, oh, they're going to love this one. This one's easy. That's why I say if it's not a challenging exam, actually, you do have to know something about all of these things I'm talking about, though. And if you do, then my job is successful because you know everything there is about object-oriented design, if that's the case. Okay, so the concept also of the abstract class and abstract methods and some of the rules that are associated with that. There's only a couple, actually. Whether or not, if you have an abstract method, the class has to be abstract. What does an abstract class actually mean in terms of its implementation? Why would you want to use one? And underneath it here, following along that lines, is what is an interface? And interface is not a class, by the way. It is an interface. You can't actually make an instance of an interface. You can build a class. And then that brings into, in fact, we had an entire lecture on interfaces. I don't remember exactly which number it was, but it's labeled on the slide set. In fact, the whole thing says interface. We have an entire lecture on abstract classes as well. So all of the questions come out of the lectures. So go through the lecture and go, well, do I know that? Do I know that? Do I know that? If you know all those, then you're great. You actually got it. So the concept of using more than one interface and not being able to use more than one abstract class. So we build an abstract class as a base class. We inherit with an implementation class. And when we use interfaces, we can use interfaces with abstract classes at the same time. We can use and build off of more than one interface. So knowing, how that works together in terms of the structure, and why are we going to use an interface? Why would we want to use an abstract class? And it's not the type of an exam where you could just remember one little piece of it, which is why, everybody sort of says, I give somebody the choice, and I say, multiple choice or short answer? Oh, multiple choice. Everybody wants multiple choice. Problem is, if I asked you, why would you want to use an abstract class instead of an interface for something, then, if you could draw on something, you could actually answer that question. Unfortunately, I think multiple choice is harder, because you're looking at all these answers and you're like, wow, man, I don't even remember that concept. I don't know if that's true or not. And I did make this easy for you in that there is only one right answer. If any of you were here a couple years back, I had a nasty exam. I knew it was nasty when I wrote it. I knew it was bad. And it had, select all that apply. And it was, half of them had every one of the questions had more than one right answer to it that you had to select on it. So it made this actually easy. It's just select one. Only problem is when you look at it, you're going to be going, oh my, just one? Yeah, just one. And they're all the same format, so. I did throw in a couple true falses in there, actually. Maybe one or two on each one of the exams. We also talked about access methods in this particular class. And the interface, the class interface, public interface, where we have the driver program that can make an instance and run methods from a public. We talked about inheritance and how private is used for data members in classes that we know we're going to inherit from, because we want to make sure that we protect the integrity of the class. The reason why we have the different access methods, the public, the private, protected. I don't actually get into, what is public, what is private, what is this. Instead, the questions are a lot more application-based. You're not going to find very many definitional type of questions. Instead, what the exam does is it assumes you know the differences between them, and you're asked, if given this option, would you create this way, this way, or this way? Then you have to kind of think of that's why. So you can look at this and go, well, it could be public, it could be private. Yeah. And then you have to pick the one best answer of it. So not to scare you, but that's essentially how you should approach it. Let's see. The main method concept, not on here, but on here actually, is tested on this exam as well. Hopefully we know, not all classes have a main, and that the main is the driver program that we're creating, and it's in a class, and everything we're running everything in Java that we create is a class. So we have one class that has a main, which is our starting point. And we didn't get into it, but if we had applets and things, we'd actually have kind of a separate kind of concept going on, but this would be for an application-based development environment. I would also, as a side note, this is one of the odd questions that's only on this version of the exam, is about default access rights. This particular version of the 5 forms has something about default. And unfortunately, I'm not going to go through all different 5 forms, and I only printed out Form A, so I can't tell you anything. So that's why I do it on purpose, actually. Otherwise, I'd give you all the answers. All right, so we know how to invoke methods and objects. Invoking methods and objects, static methods, how we're invoking those. Remember, we're doing it from a class level. We're not doing it from an instance or an object. Instance of an object, we're doing it from the class implementation. Why do we want to do that? Going back to the static concept. Instance methods, the dot notation. That's what this dot notation stands for. The inheritance, actually kind of talked about that already. Inheritance in Java concepts, and extends and implements, knowing that extends is for inheritance. implements, uses the interfaces in terms of what it is we're working with. Those techniques on subclasses, the classes, the subclasses, the superclasses, the hierarchy, the design in which we separate out, we build and we specialize on classes from generic all the way through an advanced specialization. Knowing everything comes from object in terms of the inheritance. That's one of the, it's not on this one, but it's one of those, there's an object kind of question on one of them. So, meaning that everything comes from the same class, from object. Concept of super and this, and why we use it. That one I'm going to let you, if you can't answer that question, you haven't done any of the programming assignments. So do the programming assignments and we'll figure that one out. But knowing when to use this and super, knowing that you could call super as a method, right at the beginning of the method, you could actually call it and it'll go back and run the constructor without actually having to, you know, this dot something for this particular objects, variables, data members, and stuff. So, the concept of encapsulation. And I totally forgot to put this on here, actually, but I'm thinking of it right now because I totally forgot, was also the concept of when we looked at the built-in abstract classes of some of the collections and things of that nature, which kind of gives us, or leads into the encapsulation concept, where we can extend a class from, let's say, a linked list or something, or a list, and we can create a linked list out of it without having to worry about the implementation details of building that particular base class. And we can take that, we can extend it, add more functionality to it, and kind of reinvent the wheel as we go on, and it gives us our base functionality, our built-in libraries that we can actually build from. But encapsulation itself is more of on the lines of information hiding, and again explained in lecture number 11. 11 has everything in it. There are no repeated questions from the midterm. It's brand new. There's nothing that carried over from the midterm. It's more global in terms of concepts for the entire course. In terms of going back to the encapsulation, polymorphism, inheritance, I know the type of inheritance. Are we looking at in Java? Are we looking at double, single, multiple, kind of inheritance lines? What can we do with inheritance? It promotes reuse, obviously. It promotes specialization in classes, better organization of code, and how in terms of encapsulation, it provides a higher level of abstraction in terms of what we're looking at. We can look at an object and encapsulate all of the intricate details of it. As long as we leave the public interface the same, we can swap it in, swap it out with other objects that do the same function and work the same way. And we can actually kind of reuse code as well and kind of build and grow and maintain code in terms of that. It also makes it a little bit easier from a programming perspective to conceptualize the big picture, to see all the moving pieces of the entire program if we encapsulate the details. The concepts related to polymorphism are more on the lines of how it can be used from an application, from a programming application perspective, in terms of not necessarily from a writing source code, but from a its usefulness in terms of its overall concept. Because we didn't actually see, there were a couple of questions and I actually pulled them out because we didn't really look at that too much in terms of how do we actually design that in the source code. How do we put polymorphism in there in terms of overloading something, or in terms of creating the design. So you actually will have more surface level stuff on the concept of polymorphism because we never, for some strange reason, we never got there for some reason. I don't know why. So. Let's see. Oh wow, there's a question on subclasses, putting a class inside of another class, which was that end part of that lecture I just covered. I didn't really cover it very much, so you can go ahead and read through that lecture actually. And it's a concept question actually. One on restrictions of using super reference in a constructor, actually, so on the super concept. Abstract interface, polymorphism, concept of signatures, a method signature. What does that mean, by its signature? And that's actually kind of covered as well in terms of, its parameter list. It's the way that it's written. And if you need more information on that, take a look at the inheritance lecture. Actually, it mentions the word signature all over the place in that lecture, and it kind of goes through a lot of different concepts. Wow, that is there's only 25 questions, so it's not that much on there. That's the meat of the exam. I would say a lot of the questions are pure object-oriented design types of questions by concept. You could probably pass this exam without writing a single line of Java source code. Well, you can. You don't have to write a single line of Java source code to pass this exam. You don't actually even have to know how to program in Java to pass this exam, actually. However, you might notice it's pretty comprehensive. It's covering everything we talked about. And it's going to be hard not to have the experience of writing the source code. Because, as an example, the use of the abstract class, the use of a static data member or something, it's helpful to actually be familiar with the source code writing in terms of the techniques that you're doing, because the questions are heavily based on that. But it's not asking you to remember how to create a class or remember how to create a static something or other method or variable or something of that nature. Yeah, actually, in looking at this, you could probably implement the same. I could probably reuse the same exam for C++. Actually. And one of the reasons when I started out kind of looking at this, not only did I want to keep it object-oriented design, but I didn't want anyone who was challenged by the source code writing to have complex, another set of problems with the exam. Because if you haven't noticed that the source code writing, the 5 assignments is worth 25 points, isn't it? Yeah, 5 assignments, 5 points each for 25. That's where you're going to get, that's where I'm going to test your source code writing skills. The final exam is going to test your concepts, no source code writing. So it's about 50-50, or if you think 25-25. So, and then we have that midterm in there that's kind of got a combination of both. And the CSLO, which is going to be a writing assignment. And the CSLO is not due until the very last day of the course, along with all of the assignments. You can take the final exam before turning in all of the assignments. However, I would not wait. I would not wait until the very last week. In fact, I'd do it before the last week of the deadline for the assignments, because the ITU at EMS is going to go down. I can tell you right now it's going to crash. And you're going to be sitting there going, oh, this is a waste of time. I've been trying to upload my assignment for like the last 2 days. It's not working, and now it's late. If you start now, actually, you don't have that many items to put in. So if you start now, you might actually get it in before the ITU EMS crashes. So now is your opportunity to ask me questions about what is or is not on the exam. You could be as specific as possible, or specific as you'd like, if you'd like. And I can tell you yes or no. You don't have to know that, or you do have to know that. If you can come up with any questions in terms of what I didn't, maybe. Or maybe I talked about something here that you are wondering, do we need to know about that? And as expected, no one's going to ask any questions. Oh, no, we do have one. Yes? Nothing. That's an excellent question. There are no swing questions. No AWT questions either. There are no GUI questions on the exam. You don't have to know anything about that last assignment. And we didn't spend very much time on it. We only had one lecture on it, which was towards the end of the course if you haven't looked at any of the lectures yet. So you can actually skip that lecture. It's not even one of the optional ones either. I don't know, how did I forget GUI? How did I forget swing? And only 2 of the sets actually have anything on collections, by the way. Because the collections questions didn't show up in all of them. If you came in late, there's 5 base questions, and then there's 20 random questions that not all the exams have the same questions. So you may get a question on a collection and you might not. So don't feel left out if your exam doesn't have a question about collections. Although knowing about it will help you if you do actually end up in that situation. So. Any more good questions? That was an extremely good question, actually. What about, what have I not covered? I can't remember. What about, nothing about syntax. You don't have to worry about Java C or Java. Nothing about applets. We never covered applets in this course. Nothing about threads. We never covered thread programming in this course either. Actually, that leads me to another. We took out one of the assignments, didn't we? The 5th. So I was mistaken. There's only 4 assignments worth 5 points each. But the whole thing is worth 25 points. You'll get 5 extra credits if you do the last one. We didn't cover threads. We left threads out. Is that right? Am I quoting this right? So some of you who haven't been here all term and are just here to hear what's going to be on the final. We made the last one, right? Yeah, the last one was optional. If you do it, you turn in all 5, you'll get 5 points extra. You'll come up with 105% if you ace everything out. Otherwise, if you do 4, you'll get your full 25 points without having to do the 5th one. Nothing on threads. Nothing on synchronization, although nobody asked me that. Well, we didn't cover threads, so you probably wouldn't have known about synchronization or synchronize. What else would you want to know?
How many sets do you have?
There's 5 different sets, 25 questions per set. Only 5 questions are common among all sets. Think of 5. I was in the 5 mood. Sets of 5. Let's see. Nothing on web stuff. We didn't cover web stuff. Nothing on, I don't know, what else would I ask? What have I forgotten? Now's your chance. Actually, believe it or not, this is our last class as well, which I forgot to mention. So, our exam is not until the 25th. Was that right? Okay, good. I'm relying upon you guys over here because you know what's going on. The 25th. Which means next week we don't have class. You can have an extra week to study, actually. For those of you who came in late, we're just sitting down right now. I'm actually starting the wrap-up. And in the wrap-up, I'm going to let you know that this video is going to be available online, just in case you're half asleep. Or you know someone who wasn't here, you can tell them to listen to the video. Or you forgot, if I mentioned something, you can go listen to the video. You can also send me an email message, if you'd like, that says, is such and such going to be on the exam? And I can say, yeah, or no. The swing was a good question, actually. So. Nothing about packages. Nothing about importing, actually, either. I left out the whole package concepts. How could I have done that? I don't know. But we didn't really talk about packages outside of what they were. We didn't really create, I didn't actually even require that you use packages either. But there's a lot of stuff on packages if you ever take another Java class. Usually it's taught in a Java programming course versus an object-oriented design. So if you focus your efforts on object-oriented design, that's where you're gonna. That's the focus of the exam. Any other questions? Now I figure out what I left out. I left out swing and AWT. No question on casting. Nobody asked me that. But if you did the second assignment, was it the second one with the employees? Yeah, you had to cast. You had to switch objects that were employees back to staff. And you had to find out what type the object was, reference type the object was. Well, there aren't any questions on that either. That would have been a good area, actually. That would have been, if I had put those questions in, that would have been hard, I think. Because most of you guys actually probably haven't done that assignment yet, so you don't even know what I'm talking about. Oh, let's see. The first assignment was pretty straightforward. The second one had that casting the object types, figuring out what type of object. No, none of the special string classes. Although there is on one of the sets, there's a question about string objects, but it's nothing of the methods in terms of. It's not a question about. It's not a question about subscripts or using them like a kind of an array index or anything. Nothing like of that nature. It's more. It uses the string as an object type, and I believe, I can't remember. It's not on this exam here actually. It's on one of the other versions of it. It talks about using a string or creating a string or something. In terms of using the string, it's actually in the string. It was in one of the lectures we actually went over. Also in, I'm trying to think, the I/O classes, I/O stream in none of that stuff, none of the I/O buffering, nothing on I/O. I left I/O out completely, huh?
Exception?
Nothing on exception handling. That's another good question. I totally left that out too. Now I wish I could rewrite this exam. Nothing on I/O exceptions. Nothing on try and catch. Bummer. Good question, though. I'm trying to think, what else did we cover? No question on control flow. Oh, wait a minute. Control flow, what do you mean by that? Oh, no. No syntax questions about the Java language. Nothing about if, then, else, switch, controls. Flow control, nothing about variables, nothing about. The string question is an object-based question about creating a new object. It's not on a variable either. Nothing about programming Java syntax, actually, so you don't have to worry about that. Man, I left out I/O exception handling. Bummer. What else did we cover? Recently, I don't know. I think I got everything, actually. Huh? Serverless, we didn't even cover that in this class.
Any expected outputs?
Huh?
Any expected outputs?
Any expected outputs? No, there's no questions that ask you for expected outputs of anything because there's no questions with source code in it. Yeah, all the questions are text. There's no source code examples that you have to look at to analyze. I used to do that, actually. But then I found people just didn't like it. I don't know. It was like well, you're not in the Oracle class, but you're not going to like the Oracle test. How many people here are in the Oracle class? Uh-oh. All right, this one is an easy test. The Oracle one ended up being hard. But we'll wait. I don't want to scare you on that. I'll tell you everything you need to know about the Oracle one. It's just, when I got done running the Oracle one, I went, oh my God, oh no. These guys are going to come after me with knives. They're going to beat me up in the alley. When I got done with the Java one, they're going to love this one. I might even get some snacks or something out of this. All right, now this is a very straightforward. If you're just taking the job, this is a very straightforward exam, actually. I should have made it harder. I left out a lot of content I should have put in. And I created this one before I created the Oracle one, which is kind of weird. I don't know how that one ended up being more difficult. All right, any other questions, comments, concerns? You don't have to bring anything, just a pen or a pencil, and your student ID if you have one. If you don't have one, don't send me a message telling me you don't have one. That's fine. If you have one, bring one. If you don't have one, don't bring it. I think the summer schedule is going to be out soon. I don't know when. I don't know. There's rumors that we're going to have summer school. We're going to have something going on. So don't show up next week. Show up on the 25th unless you've made arrangements. If you haven't made arrangements yet, this is the first time I've seen you for the entire term, the posted final exam schedule is out on the website. And if you don't like your date, you can send me an email message and request another date that you can take in, another date and time. Next weekend is actually the graduation as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I have this exam going on the 16th and 17th, along with the graduation ceremony that's going on. There's actually 5 other classes there's 5 classes total that are happening next weekend. I know, interesting timing, but I guess that's maybe there was a reasoning. I don't know. Maybe they wanted to catch people before they left. Maybe. All right. So unless we have any other questions, I believe we're done. I'm hanging around because I got another class after this. So if you think of a question, you can ask me. All right, we're done.